Check us out to hear the latest on life in the volunteer state. Yvonnca and her guests discuss everything from life, love, and business with a Tennessee flair.
It's a Tennessee thing.
Always relatable, always relevant, and always a good time. This is Talking Tennessee, and now your host, Yvonnca.
This episode is brought to you by the Landes team, your go-to real estate family in East Tennessee. If you are looking to buy or sell, we are the ones you should call. Give us a call at 865-660-1186 or check out our website at YvoncaSellsRealEstate.com. That's Yvonnca, YVONNCA, sellsrealestate.com.
Welcome back to Talking Tennessee with Yvonnca. I am your host, and I am here with my dear friend, the new CEO of the YMCA in Knoxville. Welcome, Matt Ryerson.
It is great to be back.
Yes, most definitely. Well, guys, the last time we were talking with Matt, he was at a different organization. He was at the United Way of Knoxville. And you've transitioned.
I have.
You transitioned, yes. Both organizations are great organizations, but sometimes you have to make a move. Sometimes God will move you. You know, even when you don't know you need to move, He'll do a nudge. I think you got the nudge.
I did. I got a pull, a nudge, a tap on the shoulder, whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
Yep.
So what made you step out?
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
Yeah. I go back a couple of years ago, my mom passed away. Okay. And my brother and I think that hit us hard.
Yes.
I think it hit us particularly hard because a few years prior to that, my dad had passed away. Mm-hmm. My mom and dad had lots of plans and retirement, visions, thoughts of what they wanted to do. And most of it didn't come true. And my mom lived...
It shows reality to you.
Yes.
In a fast track.
Yes. In her last few years of her life, there was a lot of regret. Like, she would tell me, I'm so disappointed, I'm so sad. And there was
I wish we could have done this.
Yes.
I wish we could have done that together.
Yes. And even some anger. And I'll never forget, after my mom passed, I was up in Ohio with my brother. We're playing ping pong in the middle of the night, having a lot of reflection and conversation. And one of the conversations was about, we need to learn from this. We can't live our lives at any point in regret. And so fast forward to my time at the United Way. I was in the United Way network for 15 years total.
15 years.
A lot of fundraising, an incredible organization, doing incredible stuff. But the old football saying that I use all the time is, I emptied the tank. Like, I had poured my heart and soul into that work here in Knoxville, especially, and we all felt it during COVID.
Yes. That was hard.
It was really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And the tank was really empty, and I was having a hard time. I'd take a vacation or go on something on the weekend and try and...
And you just felt burnt out.
Yes. And...
But you found out it's more than just being burnt out.
Yeah. And so I also, at that time, was feeling a real pull to get closer to the work.
Yes.
The United Way, great organization, but they're a layer removed from the work, right? They do a lot of fundraising, they do convening, all of it's important. But I kept finding myself wanting to get closer to the families we serve, the kids we serve,
you
the
wanted to go
seniors we
deeper.
serve. Yes.
Okay.
I didn't know what that looked like, but my time in the United Way, I built some good relationships. I was able to be transparent and started planning a transition. And during that, my predecessor at the YMCA, Jim Dixon, was going through retirement. And the timelines didn't match perfectly. Mm-hmm. But as you were talking, it's funny how barriers get removed, and doors open. And a number of things position themselves, a lot of gifts to me and my family that really opened a door at the YMCA. And for me, it was a homecoming. I started my career at the YMCA, my first almost 10 years of my professional career as a kid, leading camps and childcare and fitness and health. All of that was kind of the start of my career, and it felt like kind of a return back.
It's like going back home.
It is.
Something that is dear to your heart. You went out, you did great things, but let me go back home and dig deeper.
Yeah.
That type thing. I would say that a lot of it has to do with obedience. I can relate to you because I lost my parents. Okay. I lost my parents before I was 40 years old. I was without parents.
Ooh, I'm sorry.
And when you go through that, you have to lean on a lot of people in the community for guidance, and you knock your head a lot.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't have parents, you knock your head a lot. But you have great mentors in the community, and I had great mentors in the community. But the one thing about not having parents, you reflect on what you could have done if they were there, and what they could have done, with you, with your family, your children, all that. And so I think with you sharing that, it just shows that you wanted to make sure that you were doing the work that really brought you joy.
Yes.
Not saying that the United Way didn't bring you joy, but you wanted a deeper joy.
Yeah.
And with your tank being emptied, I think every leader needs to be fulfilled in whatever that may be. Okay. And when you're not being fulfilled in a position, you gotta step out on faith and just look for that fulfillment.
Yeah.
And then you'll be a better leader. You'll find a part of your community that you fit.
Yeah.
And I think you found your fit.
I did, and thank you for saying that. It's really interesting because the role I had at United Way as president and CEO is such an honor.
Yes.
Like it was an incredible privilege to serve in that role.
Most definitely.
So you feel like this duty and responsibility to never take it lightly, to honor it. And I came to this point, and this is really fascinating, and it was almost a kind of an upside down mentality. But for so long, I was like, I can't give up this job because so many people would die to have this job.
Yes.
This is such a privilege. Then the other side of that equation is, but if the tank is empty, if you're not finding the fulfillment that you really need,
are you really serving that position in the way that it should be served, because it's a privilege to be that CEO and make it to be a CEO? Am I serving that position in good order?
That's right. Exactly. It's a disservice to the organization.
Because God said do everything in good order.
Right.
Okay.
And it was through that discernment process that I said, this is a move we and my wife and family, we really need to make. But like you said, I was scared.
Yes.
I was more,
What do you think your biggest challenge was? Well, biggest challenge is making that decision. Okay. Yeah. But what was your challenge in moving? I mean, once you got it in your mind, okay, I've got to do this. What do you think your biggest challenge was?
And I'm embarrassed to say this, but my biggest thing was, what are people going to think?
And you know what, Matt? Let me say this. I respect that you're saying it. I think more people need to say that, okay? Because I believe, we're taught, don't worry about what other people think. But to a certain extent, we do care.
Yeah.
We don't want people to think that we did something wrong. We don't want people to think that there's some big secret, because people love theory.
Right.
They do.
Right.
The big theory of, okay, what did Matt do, or why is he leaving, that type thing. And we have to realize that if more people don't speak up and say, my tank was empty.
Yeah.
I just didn't have any fulfillment, and I don't think I was giving what that position needed at that time. So I chose to step down for the fulfillment for all involved.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
We have to be better at saying, okay, we have to understand that people are going to talk. That's what they're going to do. But what the biggest thing is, are we doing what God wants us to do?
Yeah.
Are we moving the way that God would want us to do? And with your family, the stress of it all, it brings a burden. And I'm going to tell you, I will honor my pastor that passed away a few years ago. The one thing that he taught me when I accepted the calling on my life as a prophet, is that he said, when things become a burden, you're not doing God's work.
Wow.
He said, because God will never allow things to be a burden. He said, when it becomes a burden, you have to move. Because he said, that's how you don't try to do his job.
Right.
Okay? So if it's a burden to you, and even though you love it, you've got to move, and that's what it became to you.
Yeah. And that's, it's scary, and as the primary breadwinner in my house, you're like, what is this going to mean for...
And as a man, I truly believe that y'all's roles, I tell my husband all the time I would never want to be a man. I said, because if you really think about being a good man and a provider for your family, that's scary.
Yeah.
Because whatever decision you make affects your whole family.
That's right. And, to have, my dad worked in a factory.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm sitting there thinking about this sweet job where I'm the president of a nonprofit and I work in an office and I have all this privilege. My dad worked third shift in a factory. Mm-hmm. Who am I to complain about that? But to your point, there is a great responsibility. I felt like, could I have done that job for another 3-5 years? Probably. Mm-hmm. Would I have done it well?
Probably not.
Probably not, right?
No.
And it probably wouldn't have been my best. I probably wouldn't have been happy. My family would have felt it.
Those same people that we thought about, okay, if I leave this job, what are people going to think? Well, just imagine if you would have stayed in that job for the next 3 to 5 years and you're not fulfilled and it's a burden, then people are still going to talk because they're going to think he's not doing his job.
Right. And they would have been right.
Exactly. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you left on your own terms instead of it being a negative thought in everyone's mind that you're not doing your job.
Yeah. And I grew up in this era, and my mom and dad in particular were don't quit. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of a part of my DNA, a part of who I am.
I was raised the same way.
Yeah. And so quitting a job feels like kind of a slight on that, but the reality is it's not, to me. And certainly I stepped down and resigned, quit technically, but the reality is I like to look at it as I turn the page on the chapter, right?
Yes.
That was an incredible chapter.
Okay.
It is. Now it's somebody else's chapter to take on.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no doubt the United Way will be in great hands. They have a great board of directors and a great team over there. And now I get to dive into my next chapter.
He said, I'm going to be at the YMCA and I'm going to have passion and I'm going to have fulfillment and I'm going to dig deeper.
Yeah. In fact, one quick story. When I arrived at the Y, my second day on the job, and my office is in a Y. So I'm like I love it. In fact, across the hall from my office is our child watch program, so child care for little ones. And so the second day on the job, I'm walking into the office, and there's this mom, and she's just gotten out of a class, and she's sweaty, she's got a bag, she's trying to wrestle a toddler, and she's got a car seat. We've all seen it and done it, right?
Yes.
And so I was able to toss my bag aside, run over, and say, "Hey, can I help you with the car seat? I got 4 kids. I'm kind of a pro." And she laughed. And she starts talking about not knowing I work there.
Do y'all see how approachable this person is? Did you hear this? How approachable he is? Keep going.
So I'm able to help her get this toddler squared away. And she is just going on and on about how she's a single mom, that she's got a scholarship to the YMCA, that she couldn't commit the time or energy to do this work on herself and for her family if she didn't have the support of this organization. She turns to me and she says, "Do you work here?" I said, "Yeah, I just started." She has no idea what my role is.
Yes.
She goes, "Well, you tell your boss that this is a great place to work."
And I know you want to.
I was like, you know what? I'll spread the word.
Yeah, he's like, I'll tell him.
Yeah. So it was that confirmation walking into the office that transition was the right step.
And the best part of you is you allowed yourself to help the person. It was not in your mind is let me know that let me let her know I am the boss. You didn't care about that.
Yeah.
It wasn't about telling her who the boss was. It was about meeting her needs.
That's right.
And so that's why I love you so much, because you're so humble and you've always been that way ever since I met you. And I remember when it was announced. And I went to Adrienne and David and I said, I'm going to give him a moment, because I know it's probably a lot going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of noise.
Yes. But I said, I've got to reach out to him. I got to reach out. So I remember putting congratulations on your page and whatever. And I think I said on the thing about coming on the podcast because I'm like, I'm supporting my friend and I want my friend to come on the podcast so we can show his new journey because I believe in him, that type thing. And so I thank you for coming.
No, thank you for all that.
Most definitely, because I believe in you, and I believe that if you believe in somebody and they make a decision for their life, then you need to be a true supporter and show your support.
Yeah.
So what would you tell somebody that is in the same, their mind space is the same? What advice would you give them if they wanted to make that move?
Yeah, being a great friend, you understand this. I think to have a circle of confidants, of mentors, of supporters, of loved ones, and being transparent, right? I mean, we can get attracted to jobs because it's a bigger title or more money. Those are almost always bad decision-making factors. It's more about fit and where you are on your journey. People that will speak truth into your life are incredibly valuable, and to be able to have those conversations and being honest with yourself. The other part of that is, and I can speak to this because this was a very scary transition for me. Don't let fear dictate the decision.
Yes.
I'm not saying that fear isn't sometimes an indicator that you should step away, but
and fear is real.
Yes, but a lot of times the fear is the narrative in your mind that you're telling yourself, right? That you're telling yourself, oh, you're going to lose this and you'll never be respected again. You're not going to be the same leader. You're not going to have those opportunities again. And that's your lack of self-confidence. And by the way, I'm not saying yours in the world. I'm talking about me.
Yes,
I was battling that exact internal conversation. In fact,
and I think it's harder for a man. I'm not saying it's not hard for women, but I think it's harder for a man because y'all wear that crown of the king of things, of your family.
Right.
That type of thing. And it's like, how am I going to make my family look?
Yes, yeah. And that's
how many people are going to go to my wife and say, what is going on with Matt?
Or talk to your kids at school.
Yes, that type of thing,
Scary.
So, and it's like, this is not my kid's decision. This is not my wife's decision. I'm just not fulfilled here, but it affects them, that type thing. So would you say when you're making that move, I always tell people, pray about it and let God lead you on things. Fear, when I get fear in my heart about anything, I learned this when David got sick. I had so much fear because I had 12 doctors tell me daily he was a dead man. That he was not going to make it. And imagine that going in your mind.
Right. Someone
saying this. And by the numbers, he should be dead. Yeah. Okay? But by the promise of God and the miracle of God, he's not a dead man. And I want y'all to know the first thing that Matt asked me today, y'all, is how's your husband?
Yeah.
So this is
who happens to be out working hard, so he's doing really well.
Yes. So this is a real friendship. This is not a top surface friendship. We care about our families and we care about knowing about each other. And thank you for asking. But I know that you in your mind is if I do this, I can't go back to that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? When I make this move, is it going to be sustainable?
Yeah.
I think it will be.
Yeah, with me too. Thank you. Two things. You asked the question, what would I advise people? To be able to speak your fears out loud, expose those fears. Anything that's in the dark. Isolation is a great place for negative thoughts to thrive, right? And so I'll never forget sitting with my wife and saying to her, what will people think?
Yeah.
And as it came out of my mouth, I was like, well, that's a dumb thing to say.
Yes.
Why are you making decisions based on what other people will think? And I could see it written all over her face.
Yes.
She's looking at me like, what did you just say?
What did you just say?
Why would we care what other people think?
Exactly.
And that's...
But you have to pray off fear. And
Yes.
let me go back a minute because I was saying one thing. One thing I had to learn when I was in the hospital with David is to pray off fear. And so when I get fearful about something, I pray. I put my hand on my chest and I'm like, God, take the fear out of my heart, replace it with faith. God, take the fear out of I'll say it repeatedly till I start feeling better. Yeah. Take the fear out of my heart, replace it with faith. And it's helped me throughout the years, but sometimes I think that we make something so big in our head. Like it's going to just, like when we make this decision, everything's going to collapse.
Yep. My wife actually has I don't even know if this is a real word, but she says all the time that I catastrophize.
Yeah.
And what I do is the garbage truck didn't pick up the trash. And I'm like, oh, the trash is going to back up and then we're going to get rats and our house will get infested. And she's looking at me like, what are you doing? And so I think everybody can be prone to that.
That's why God made a husband and wife. Because one of them has to say,
that's right.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah, what are you
talking about? And then you have to say, okay, it is going to be. Because David wheels me in, and I wheel him in areas that he's weaker and I'm weaker or whatever. And I think that's what makes the marriage a good thing.
That's right.
But knowing your wife, I can see her speaking life in you.
Oh, yeah.
I can see her saying, it's going to be okay. We're going to make it, but everybody doesn't have that.
Yeah.
So what would you say to the person that say they're single, say they're in a marriage that doesn't have that support? You did say it. You said about the mentors.
Yeah.
You got to have, and I know that everybody thinks this is just a saying you say, but surround yourself with like-minded people. And people that are going to truly, truly pour into you.
Yeah, and it's a big deal when you have somebody you believe in that's successful in life. I have a friend who's a CEO at a hospital down in Georgia, and he's talking into, I'm really excited about the next big thing you're going to accomplish. Like his mind was already on to the next thing, and that builds that confidence in yourself when you're like, what am I afraid of?
I'm telling you, you're going to do great things.
Yes.
You're going to do great things, and people are going to get to see, I think, the YMCA in a different way. Not saying the old way was bad, but it needs to evolve. And that's my next question.
Yeah.
Is in leadership since you joined the YMCA. What would you say? How are y'all evolving?
Yeah, that's such a good question. One of our board members shared this phrase the other day in a board meeting that I really liked, and it was about social connectedness. Okay. And in fact, Dr. Murthy, who was a 2-time U.S. Surgeon General, wrote this paper recently titled My Parting Prescription to America. And in this, as the Surgeon General, they're often, hey, we got to be careful of smoking, of cancer, of, that's the Surgeon General's job. The Surgeon General in this case said, one of the problems we have is a lack of community and connectedness. And so when our board member said, what the Y is to me, it's a place for social connectedness. Do we have a gym and do we do swimming? Absolutely. Do we do childcare? Yes. But what we're really about is creating a community around those. Yes. And it's this social connect, especially post-COVID when we were all isolated. Not to mention we all carried.
Horrible.
It was awful. And not to mention we all carry devices that we are all prone to being on far too much. I'm as guilty as anybody. But when I go work out at a YMCA because I need to get my workout in, I can go to a treadmill in my basement and do it in isolation.
But it's not like the YMCA.
That's right. Or I can walk in and see a front desk person. They're asking me about, hey, how's your day going? It's pretty good. And I see Ralph on the treadmill. Hey, Ralph. Yeah. How's work today? It's going pretty good. How about you? And all of a sudden, I'm having conversation. There's
a connection.
That's right. And so for me, I think that's what we're going to really be leaning into more. We're going to continue to provide all the services we always have. We're going to continue to provide them with excellence, really serve our families, our children, our seniors, those that are in need. Mm-hmm. But we're really going to amplify that this is a place that you can come to find your people and be connected, whether you're going to sling heavy weights in the weight room, or recently at one of our YMCAs on a Friday night, we had a board game night. Mm-hmm. Bring your family. We have all these board games. Put down your iPads, your telephones, all that stuff is set aside. You're just going to be with your family playing Life or Scrabble or whatever it is. Back in the old days, the first time we launched it, we had over 40 people. Almost 50 people showed up. There's a desire for social connection.
And a lot of young people like certain things from old school.
Yes.
They really do.
Yes.
And that's one way. The board games that's a connector.
Yeah.
It truly is a connector. And I think that, and you can talk through things like while you're playing a game about, the kids can be together talking about how school was. And I think a lot of kids, what they're going through while they're playing that game, they can get another kid through what they're going through.
Absolutely. And that's where it gets deep, right? As you kind of mentioned, for me, this gets really deep. It gets really personal where you're tearing down the barriers that we all create for ourselves, right?
Correct.
And our phones, as much as they're great resources, they also become barriers to connection. I mean, how many of us, myself included, sit with your significant other, your wife, your partner, whoever it is, scrolling. You could be talking to them,
scrolling and texting,
and then I don't know how many times I thought, I don't feel connected to you right now. Let's do something. And then I'm like, last night I was on my phone for 2 hours when I could have been talking to her all night. We at the Y really believe that we have a pathway to social connectedness, not just with your family, but with other groups, similar and different, to get these
friends and strangers.
That's right. And I feel like, and this is me getting a little bit on my soapbox, but I feel like that's also the pathway to unifying our country and our community, is to get us out of our, I'm going to post this response to their Facebook message. Instead of that, I'm sitting down playing Risk at a YMCA. We may disagree on some things, but you're going to find a lot more things that you have in common when you're forced to sit down and have conversations.
I'll tell you, I'm in leadership Knoxville this year, and we went to the Capitol for 2 days, Monday and Tuesday. And the one thing I noticed, there was the Republicans, there was the Democrats. But one thing I noticed, they all sat in one room. They all talked. They may not agree on everything, but they were unified to talk through whatever the bill, if they were talking about a bill, they were talking about a new law, whatever they were talking about, they were still unified. And I said, if everybody could see this right now, of all the things that we see in the media, of the politics, if they could only see what I got to see firsthand of both parties still working together, and still making decisions that will affect us, I was like, I think we would be more unified to realize, get your feelings out of it. I mean, everything is not made to debate. Everything is not made to argue about. How about caring about one another and understanding it's okay to disagree. It's okay to disagree. And it's okay to have a bad day. Think of some of the people that come in the Y and, they're having a really hard day. Like what you were saying, that woman, she's trying with her child, trying to figure it out. You don't know what the burden on her mind is.
That's right.
But just for you the humility that you had to help this woman and, not throw your title, not throw who you are, that type thing, but just saying, you know what? I'm a man, you're a woman, you need help, I'm going to help you with your bags or your child or whatever, and I hope your day's better.
That's right. And I mean, we all wrestle with stuff,
right?
We do. And so
we do.
To have a little empathy and especially somebody wrestling with a car seat, what I did for basically 12 years of my life, I was like, oh, I know that feeling.
He said, I know that feeling.
And so
trying to get to a meeting and you're trying to wrestle to get your child to daycare so you get to that meeting on time. I think that a lot of the things that we go through, if we could just humble ourselves enough to see that there's privilege in a lot of things that we have that someone else, the next person around the corner, may not have. I learned that when we went over a thing in Leadership Knoxville last month about poverty. Just that exercise humbled me, man. Because I'm like, in areas that I never had thought about. That type thing. What it would be like if I was getting off from work and my husband went to jail 5 minutes before I got off from work. And I thought we were going home to eat dinner. That exercise put me in a place of anxiety.
Yeah.
And it humbled me
Yeah.
because I'm like, you know, we pass judgment on a lot of people, but you have no clue what their plans was supposed to be, but it turned out a different way.
Yeah.
So if we connect and help each other, I think we'll make a better world.
Absolutely.
And I think at the
Absolutely.
YMCA, you're going to get that. Tell me this. If you could pick, I know there's probably many things, but over the time you were at the YMCA, what is your takeaway? What's the one thing that you can say? I mean, not at the YMCA, I'm sorry, at the United Way. What is the one thing that you say, I learned while I was at the YMCA?
Wow. Geez, you know, there's so many lessons. 15 years, I grew so much. Started in my first United Way, I think I was in my 30s. And
Okay.
like 15 years later, but one thing that sticks out for me that I think is along these lines that we underestimate is the power of relationship.
Okay.
You know, and especially we joke about it. In fact, my wife jokes all the time that she doesn't like to answer the phone. Like she's like, text me, I don't want to talk, right? But when you're
My husband is like
yeah. She's like, don't. But she would agree that when we're in relationship, that's where the real opportunity develops. That's where the growth happens. Whether it's in
And you have to answer the
career.
phone.
Yeah, and you have to answer the phone
Yeah.
sometimes, right? I don't know how many times I was like, this conversation would be an easier email. It'll let me off the hook, but there's a better outcome if I go have coffee with this person.
Let me tell you, I had a conversation yesterday. I'll tell you this short story. We were talking about that. And we were saying that a lot of things, if you pick up the phone and you address whatever it is, you'll get a better outcome than you sending an email, because it's easy to get at somebody through an email versus on the phone. I think it's calmer when you're connecting, that type thing. And so one of the people that was in this conversation said, oh my gosh, Yvonnca, I am so bad at that.
Yeah.
When I just don't want to deal with something, I just shoot off an email.
Yep.
You know, that type thing. And I said, you need to do better with that, because you could have stopped tension in a situation, but because you send it in an email, you don't know how they perceived it.
That's right.
You don't know how somebody perceived your email. So I agree with that. So tell me this, in the short time you've been back at the YMCA.
Yeah.
What's the one thing that you can say is different that you've learned already about the new YMCA?
Yeah, that, you know, to go back to that social connectedness, it's, you know, when we think about addiction, you think about depression, you think about, you know, quite honestly, almost 50% of our population is considered obese. When you think about our self-worth and our self-value, how we perceive ourselves, I have been doing a lot of reading, a lot of studying, and that is so much in isolation, because that voice in our head, our brain is really good at talking us out of the positive thoughts and the positive things, and
that is a good point.
And I'm as guilty as anybody. And we
are overthinkers.
Yes,
we are there's some that are worse than others in overthinking, but I think we all overthink things depending on what the situation is. Yeah. And then we get all bogged down in our head. I'm one of these people like, how do you do as much as you do? I said, because I try not to think about it. I'm a doer.
Yes.
If I think about it, it's a done deal. I've stressed myself completely out. But if I go ahead and just do and just knock off that list, it's kind of like the list in your head, but you don't write it down and you just do. And that's how I get so much done, because if I stop and think about it, Matt.
In fact, it's funny you say that. I had this conversation with my daughter. She's a junior in high school here in Knoxville. And she had a big assignment, like a paper or something. And she's just clearly overwhelmed by it. And I just told her, and this isn't genius stuff, I said, the best way to get that done is to start it. Just start it. And the reality is, we spend a lot of our times thinking, I really need to get in shape. but I am so out of shape. I wouldn't even know where to start. You know where you start? You start at the start.
Yeah.
And you start
Get on a
walking.
treadmill or do
Yes,
something.
exactly.
You start walking.
That's all, you know, and once you do that one thing, it starts building momentum. In fact, and
it's going to drive you.
There's a great speaker I've heard. I don't know if he's still speaking, a former Navy SEAL, leader in the military. His advice to people was, wake up in the morning and make your bed. And that was the key. And some of the people were like, I don't understand, what is that? He goes, you start your day off with a victory. You start your day off with an accomplishment. You started your day with a list, and you check something off your list.
Yes.
That creates momentum.
It does.
No matter what it is, if you can do a little thing, you have now moved. And once you're moving, it's easier to stay moving. Like you said, you get busy.
Yes.
And you start working. All of a sudden you're doing. You look back and you're like, wow, I've just accomplished a lot. But if we stop and look at all the stuff we have to do in the world, oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we'll shut it down because we're like, I'll never get to the top of that mountain.
Yeah.
In fact, there's this, I love this. There's a Greek myth, Greek mythology. It's called the myth of Sisyphus. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
So the myth of Sisyphus is the story of this man who sinned against the gods. And the gods determined to punish him for eternity. And his punishment was that he was going to push a boulder, a rock, up a mountain. When it got to the top of the mountain, it would roll back down and he was to push it up again. Now, the myth of Sisyphus, this guy's name is Sisyphus, was that while it was intended to be a punishment for eternity, he shifted it and said, now I have purpose. And so my purpose is to move the rock up, and it became a grind and then a point of pride. And this became his purpose and his movement. Now, I'm not saying we all want to push rocks uphill, but to me, that's become incredibly inspirational.
Yeah, and you got to work towards something and you got to figure it out and find. And I'm one of these people, when I do speaking engagements, I tell people, and I'm not saying this is easy, I can turn any negative into a positive. And people are like, no, you can't. I'm like, yeah, I can. And tell you how? Because that's what I want to do. When you put in your mind, I don't care how bad it is, I got to find something positive that's coming out of it.
That had to be true with your husband.
Yes. Because when David got sick, that's when I learned that, okay? I wrote a book about it. Positive living is that when you put in your mind, no matter how bad it sounds, because God told me, he said, it doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter what you hear or you see. If you focus on me, I'll give you your husband back. He said, and literally told me this in the very first week when David got put on life support. He said, do you want your husband? And I'm like, God, please grant this miracle. And so he said, well, get ready to work. And I'm like, but what do you mean? Get ready to work. I'm like, God, I don't know what you mean. I'm in a hospital. How am I going to work? So he made me go to every bed. Imagine this. There's 30 beds in CCU at Park West. My husband was at bed 7. If David was in Park West right now, people call him bed 7 because they remember it that much, okay? So there was 29 beds that I had to go. He would make me go to every room and pray for somebody else's situation.
Wow.
And I kept saying, God, I'm going through enough. God, why would you want me to pray for people? My mind is not there. I'm like, I'm going through my own thing. But what God made me see was every day that I would do it, I wouldn't think about my situation. Every day that I would do it, I would help somebody else to know him. Every day that I would do it, the doctors would tell me something that medically looked this way, but God would show me a different way. Every day I would do it, he would improve.
Wow. Discipline and faith.
Yes.
Wow.
So when I say I can turn anything into positive, my daughter would tell you, she's in this room, I can turn anything into positive because I choose to turn it that way. I don't choose to look at it in a negative way.
Let me ask you, how hard was that though?
Hard. Oh, Matt, when I tell you, there were days that, I think one of the hardest days was I went downstairs to go eat breakfast, came back up, a nurse runs out and says to me, her name's Miss Lisa. She says, Miss Bonnie needs you to come pray. I said, oh, I'm ready. By that time, I had got used to it because before then, I never prayed out loud, Matt. I would always pray by myself. I never prayed out loud because I was too scared that I felt like that when I would pray, I would talk to God like I'm talking to you. And I thought that if I prayed like that in front of people, people would think I was dumb.
What are people going to think?
So, yes. So I wouldn't pray like that. But this lady literally tells me that she wants me to come pray. So I'm like, okay, let's go. So I get to the door and she says, Yvonnca, I need to tell you something. And I was like, what, Miss Lisa? She said, he's dead. And I said, what? And she said, she wants you to pray over his dead body. Man, I had never done that.
Wow.
I had never prayed for, I'd never been in a room praying for a stranger spouse that's dead, and he was yellow because of jaundice. His eyes was open, okay, because he died that way. God challenged me in such a way that it was like, I'm going to take you to the darkest thing ever. But you're going to find fulfillment in doing it. So I said to Miss Claire to close his eyes. I said, I can't pray. I've never done this. Please close his eyes. Now, God does have jokes. Let me just say that, y'all. So they go to close their eyes, and she said, Yvonnca, rigor mortis sits in, so we'll try to close them, but we can't guarantee that. So they close them. So where his joke was, one eye was open, one eye was closed. And Matt, I'm like sitting here like, God, you got jokes for real. So I put my hand, normally I put my hand on someone's head when I pray for them or their heart. I just didn't have the strength to do that. So I put my hand on the bottom, on his legs. God still had jokes while I'm trying to pray. His body jumped, Matt, while I'm praying. But Matt, people wonder why I'm the way I am. God has taken me through a lot. Okay? So I love the Lord. So I'm praying, he's jerking, and I'm over here like, oh my God.
Were you like, I just healed him?
Yes. And Miss Bonnie is like so happy, and she's crying, and she's so like, oh my gosh, I don't know if he's saved or not, Yvonnca, but I know you prayed him through. This is what this woman's saying to me. I know you prayed him through. I know he's going to go to heaven now that you prayed, and I'm sitting there going, oh my God, is this really happening?
Wow.
But what I learned by doing that, it doesn't matter what you're going through. It doesn't matter what it looks like, what you hear or see. There's always somebody that has a worse situation than you. And you can bring joy to someone by speaking a positive thing instead of a negative thing and coming out of yourself. And that's how you can make sure you're not selfish when you do for others.
Yeah, you're preaching that.
And that's how you make a difference.
Yeah, it's true.
That's what I learned. So that's why I say with you, you had to move, Matt.
Yeah.
You wasn't fulfilled. There's probably people going to come to you and say, I get it. Because I could tell, Matt, that your passion wasn't there anymore. They may not have came to you yet, but they probably will come to you and say that to you because people see it's in them.
It's wild that you're saying this. The most common thing I've heard from people when I've chatted with them since the transition is, you look really happy right now.
You do. You really look happy. And you look freed. Like the load has came off of you. And so my next question to you is, what is your passion in nonprofit?
Yeah. I just, the opportunity to have a career that is dedicated to serving people, it sounds super hokey, right? Somebody's going to be listening to it and saying, oh, geez, But everything you just said, that day, walk in, the woman's juggling toddler, I just help her with the car seat. I skipped into my office. In fact, Wendy at our front desk was looking at me like, oh, just settle down. Because I was coming in all on fire and happy. And, that is this circular experience that when you bless somebody, when you serve somebody, when you help somebody, you feel that too, right?
Yeah.
And as you feel more of that, you want to give more of it. And that has this incredible community benefit. And I've had this wonderful career to be able to serve in organizations where I get to do that as my job.
Yes.
You know, and again, I think about my dad who worked in a factory and how hard that must have been, 30, 35 years working third shift in a factory. That's hard work.
Right.
Nobody's coming up to you saying, you changed my life today. Thank you very much. That's not happening. And I get to experience that in a very different way. And so for me, I think my passion for the nonprofit world is in the mission statement of whatever organization, and at the YMCA in particular, for me, serving people, putting Christian principles into practice through programs that serve all.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the mission of the Y speaks to my heart and my passion of service. But also, I think for me, the Y goes back to my career camping and working with kids and childcare,
Yes.
health and fitness, something I'm passionate about.
Sounds like your parents were a big influence on you.
They were, you know. It's funny. I was having this conversation the other day, and somebody said, "Hey, were your parents like really philanthropic?" And I said, "No, we were probably on the other end of getting philanthropy. We weren't quite there, but we grew up relatively, you know, modest."
Yes.
You know, like I said, Dad worked in a factory, so
Yeah.
we weren't living the high life or
Right.
anything, but it did shape me an awful lot. In fact,
It showed you work ethic.
Absolutely, without question, my dad and my mom. And in fact, you know, and this is a message I would give to your many listeners, is you got family or friends or mentors, but especially your parents that pour into you like that. Make sure they know it.
Yes.
You know, and
give them the flowers. Tell them what
Adrienne,
they've done.
let them know.
Yes, exactly. Let them, and she does. I have to say that my son sent me a video the other day, and he saw it on something, and it was different people said, "Thank you, Mom, for this. Thank you, Mom, for that. Thank you for this," or whatever. And so Jaden's message was, I could add even more of thank yous because what you've done in my life. And Matt, I was like, bawling, just bawling. And I'm like, oh my gosh, because my son is 15 and he's trying to find his way. And this year's been a hard year, you know? Yeah. And so,
it's a tough age.
But it's like for him to say that and just come in the house and I love you, Mom. I love you, Mom. And just kept hugging me. It just made me feel good because it's like, okay, even though he's going through a hard time, he still sees the positive. Because I preach this to my kids. Find positive, no matter how negative it is, it's a message in it or something in there. So now I've got to talk about a negative. The negative of charity, the toxicity of charity.
Yeah.
And the reason why I want to talk about it is because we can't sit and say everything is golden.
No.
Yeah. So what could you say? Why is it so toxic?
Yeah. So, you know, it's about doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard. Like we all, I think almost everybody I've ever met is big-hearted. They want to help people. The hard part of that is how do we help people? And I think our first instinct is to give stuff to people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, an act of kindness is not bad. You buy a cup of coffee for somebody, help somebody with Christmas gift. You know, there's steps. Yes, those acts of kindness are necessary to bring the world closer together. But I think also a lot of times our charity starts really becoming that, meaning we're just going to give to you until you're in a better situation. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, the research tells us, the work tells us, the history tells us, you don't give people out of poverty, right? That just doesn't happen.
It doesn't.
The truth is, most people don't want that, but they'll accept it. And I say all the time, you know, I this is a joke, it's true. I was in college, got my first apartment, turned on the TV, and I had cable. I didn't sign up for cable, it was just on. So for my entire first semester in that apartment, I had free cable.
And you loved it.
I loved it. I had all the channels.
Yes.
Right? All the channels.
And I watched it all.
Yeah, the channels I shouldn't have, the channels I did want. Yeah. Went home for Christmas, came back, turned on the TV, cable's off.
And you're like, oh.
Yeah. But I took it a step further, right? Somebody that was getting something for free, I called the cable company. And I literally said, hey, I just got to tell you, the cable's off. I was wondering if you need to send out a technician or get this fixed. And they said, what's your account number? And I literally said, I don't have an account, but I had cable.
Yes.
And I need to get that back.
Yes. And you're over like thinking it's okay just to call the cable company and tell them that, how dare you take my cable?
That's right. It created a sense of dependency or an expectation, an entitlement that I had earned.
A victim mentality.
Yes. And, and you heard where I grew up. My dad would have been mortified for me saying, I need free cable. But I got really used to it. That applies to everyone.
I was just about to say that. I hate to say this, but this is true. There's not many people that would get free cable and pick up the phone and say, oh, well, you know what? Cable's on my TV, but I didn't pay you, so turn it off.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
You're giving it to me. I want to keep it.
And a lot of people will not admit that, but we all would have taken the free cable.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Been like, winner.
Yeah.
Winner chicken dinner. But the thing with that is we grow, hopefully, into knowing, okay, we shouldn't. It was great while it happened, but now we need to pay for it. But there's a lot of times that people can get caught up.
Yeah.
In getting.
Yeah, that's the foundation of toxic charity, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you create a situation that enables people to become dependent on subsidies or entitled or expecting some type of supports, now your charity has become toxic. It's actually become part of the problem. And I think in America in particular, we have gotten into that cycle where we create a lot of charity that creates a lot of dependency. And therefore, you're going to have this perpetual cycle of poverty because that is not going to uplift or encourage. It really serves to tear down dignity of individuals that now expect the system to take care of them. Even though they probably originally didn't start that way, it doesn't take long.
But when you get things free all your life, you find a way to keep getting it free.
Yeah.
And I do agree with that. I think the best thing you can do is, I'm not saying, because I'm a giver. My grandfather told me there's two types of people in the world. There's givers and there's takers. And you got to figure out which one you want to be. But I will say on giving, you have to get to a point of, this was a stepping stone.
Absolutely.
But this is not supposed to be a forever thing. And a lot of
hand
people,
up, right?
Yes,
yeah.
And a lot of people like to stay in a victim state.
Yeah.
And I learned that probably about 5-6 years ago. I realized in certain situations, being a victim will bring you more attention than being an overachiever or an achiever. And a lot of, because if you think about it, Matt, in the world, is that when you hear something negative, okay, on social media, it'll have 1,000 likes, loves, but if you see somebody graduating from University of Tennessee, to me that is phenomenal.
Right.
I didn't graduate from University of Tennessee, so I wish I would have. But then look at it, you'll see people will like it, but it will not get the attention that a negative thing. And I talk about this on my social media. I'm like, a lot of people don't realize they're part of the problem because we sit and say, oh, well, you need to be positive and you need to be da-da-da-da-da. But are you the one that makes the negative post trend more than the positive post?
Yeah, that's absolutely. And what is that old saying? Newspapers used to say, if it bleeds, it leads. I think and what they were saying
no, you remember when they used to say is all press is good press?
Yeah.
No.
It's good for maybe the newspaper,
I
right?
mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But all press is not good press. And so you have to realize that I will help people, but I try my best. I pray to God that I will enable people. I had a psychiatrist to tell me, cut my checkbook off for 30 days and you'll get to see people in your life. People that you think is really there for you. The day that you cut your checkbook off, I let her control it for 30 days to prove it to myself. I'm like, and one girl got mad at me over a dog because I wouldn't give her the money for a dog. It's unbelievable how people get enabled.
Yeah.
And they accept it. And you keep doing it. And you have to stop.
Right, because
and give them opportunity.
Yes, you become part of that problem.
You do.
Yeah.
You do.
Now,
and I was part of that problem. Because go ahead.
Acts of kindness are good.
Yeah, it is.
Encouraging people, lifting people up, getting them through tough experiences, all that's positive. So I don't want any of your listeners to say that we're bashing all charity.
No, they already hear me saying it already. So you have to give opportunity.
Yes,
but you have to. My favorite scripture in the Bible is faith without works is dead. Mm-hmm. You got to have faith and you got to do the work. So it's no different. Is that okay? A charity can help you, but you've got to help yourself. Exactly.
That's it.
A charity can help.
Yep.
In life, you really have to realize that you have to help yourself along the way. No matter what charity has been so great to, help you out of a bind, it's not their job to keep you out of the bind. You have to realize that you have to work every day to improve and to make sure that you're doing your part of your life.
Yeah.
The organization cannot be your last resort all the time. You have to work to be better.
Yeah. The myth of Sisyphus, right? You gotta push the rock up the hill.
You have to push the rock up the hill, and you have to say, okay, I'm here now. I don't want to come back here.
That's right. That's right.
I may not have my utilities on, and this charity helped me to get my utilities on, but it's my job to get up every day, to go to work, to make the money, to pay my utilities. So I don't have to go back to this charity or any other charity to get my utilities on, because that's really not their debt. And I'm just using that for an example.
Right.
Okay? It's just, you can't... Charities have to help so many different people. So you have to realize if they helped you right now, let there be room to help someone else.
Yep.
I think that's the biggest thing is that people get so selfish and entitled, they don't think about there's other people that need help just like them. Yeah. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what would you tell the next person, in the transition of doing charity work? If somebody says, you know what, I want to go and do a different type of charity work, but they just don't know what.
Yeah.
On that purpose thing.
Yeah.
What would you say? What is the blueprint?
Yeah, that's really
is
actually
that a hard question?
It is a hard question. I was just gonna say, but it goes back to, we all there's a passion in our heart. Some people, like I knew this woman who ran a domestic violence shelter. I got to know her really well. She was so dedicated to the women in the shelter.
Yes.
And we went out to lunch, and I was having a conversation with her, and she said, I was a victim of domestic violence. Yes. And I said, I didn't know that. I'm sorry. And she goes, I have taken that experience and made it my passion to help other women that are in the situation that I used to be in. And I thought, that is an incredible way, as you described, and you do this really well, taking a negative
and turning into a positive.
Into a positive, because we know people that have trauma in their lives, a lot of time that turns them in the other direction.
It does.
And for her in particular to move that in a positive. So I would just say to anybody, really pay attention to what fills your bucket, right? What is getting you out of bed? When you see an article, you're like, I want to read this, or something that just gets you supercharged. Pay attention to that. Doesn't mean that you have to work exactly in that, but if you can stay in that space, especially in the nonprofit world, because the nonprofit world is not a 9-to-5 job, never will be. It's I wake up, I'm thinking about it. I go to bed thinking about it. In the middle of the night when I wake up, I'm thinking about it.
Because there's always somebody that needs to be helped.
Absolutely. And so it should be something that really fills your bucket, that gives you energy.
And that's how you discover your purpose.
Absolutely.
That's you have to work, and you have to experience things, And along the way, you discover what your purpose is.
Right. And that can evolve.
Oh, yes, it can.
But
Yes, it can.
You got to listen to it.
So how do you prioritize health, wellness while leading an organization?
You know, it's easier now that I have a locker room across the hall from my office and a gym upstairs from my, you know, I'm really passionate about that. I'm a big runner, but you know, that's one of those hard things. But if I want to be at my best at whatever, being a parent, being a husband, being an employee, I've got to start with self-care, right? And that old saying about, you know, the plane's going down and it always tells you put your mask on first.
Yes.
Because you can't help somebody else if you're suffering from the symptoms of whatever's going on. And so
that's it.
It's really hard because I think what a lot of people do is they want to avoid the trauma, the mental health challenges, the negative experience, whatever it is, and we just plow forward.
Yes.
I am a living testament that'll catch up. Sooner or later,
it will.
It catches up. It's better to say, okay, what do I do to make myself healthy? And for me, running, health and fitness, longevity are all a part of my walk. You know, I love to experiment with healthy initiatives that benefit me and my family. For somebody else, it might be reading and learning and you know, whatever it is in your life. And we intuitively know it. Like, more often than not, we can say, I shouldn't drink that much Diet Coke. I'm not judging you. I'm in your camp.
Because I love Diet Coke.
I love Diet Coke
trying
too.
to be better.
Right? Or you know, somebody that says, I got to quit smoking.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I got to get to bed earlier and get better night's sleep. We all know intuitively those things. The hard part is to say, you know what, I'm putting the phone down tonight. I'm going to bed at 9:30. Yeah. And I'm going to make
that's going to be Yvonnca tonight.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that one. But
yes.
And I think that's it, is that we just got to prioritize. Now, it doesn't mean we put ourselves above other people.
Right.
It just means we put the mask on first.
But if you think about it, in the order of what God said it's Him, then yourself. And I think the reason why I think that God did that is to say, when you're full and you're confident and in you can do so much more for other people. But when you have low self-esteem, you have no power of anything of you, I think you can do less for people.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
It's compounding interest, right? It's
exactly. Yes.
Yep.
So the YMCA.
Yes.
What is your movement?
Our movement, you know, social connectedness, support of families, health and wellness. You know, I have a dream of changing. This is my big dream. We have zip codes in Knoxville where the life expectancy is 10 years less than another zip code in Knoxville. And
really?
Yes. And you know, what contributes to that? It's complex, right? Lots of things. Healthy choices for food, health and wellness opportunities, academic supports, family connectedness, all of that is played. You know, if I were to point to one thing, what is our YMCA movement? Is we are going to change the life expectancy of the people of Knoxville. I really want to see people living a long... He wants
to change, say it again.
I want to change and amplify the life expectancy of the people of Knoxville. And not just the life expectancy, but the type of life we live during that life. So that it's not the last 10 years of my life, can't get up, I can't bend over, I can't walk very well. I want people to be in their 80s and 90s and out walking the neighborhood, spending time lifting up their grandchildren. That's
people are living longer, you know, and thriving. You know, I see 70, 80-year-olds moving better than me.
That's true.
I
see them at the Y every day.
Okay, so let's be clear. So I think that if you put that time in your health and wellness, and being in your community and engaging with people, I think that's what helps you to live longer.
I agree. It's all part of the puzzle.
So my last question.
Yeah.
What outside of YMCA, what fulfills Matt Ryerson the most?
Two things jump out at me. I love watching my wife in her element, and that can be anything, but for her right now, when I see her connecting with people, playing a hostess, I just get lifted up. And the second thing, The second thing that is, I don't doubt that, and he should be very proud. The second part of that, and I know you know this as well, is when your kids succeed. There is nothing greater. There's no greater heartbreak when your kids struggle. Now, that's a part of life.
Yeah, but when they succeed.
Oh, it is the greatest thing. And I have such great children right now, and all of them at some level are succeeding. And so that's what really brings me joy.
Adrienne does a lot of great things, but I'll tell you something recently that Adrienne did that stuck out so far to me. She just accepted a seat on the board of CASA.
Oh, wow. That's a great nonprofit.
I said, and when the ask came for her to go on that board, I tried my best to not say, go. But it was like when she talked to me, I tried to stay,
Yeah.
But when they announced it yesterday, I sat down at the Capitol, and everything that was going on, the moment that I saw that, I was like, yes.
Yeah.
And it was not a pat on my back. It was that she's succeeding in her own way. And to go in nonprofit and sit on a board and you know you're going to make a difference, that's bonkers to me.
Yeah, especially a nonprofit.
Yes.
Protecting vulnerable kids.
Yes. And so I get what you're saying about when you see your kids succeed.
Nothing better.
Yeah. Well, you can come back anytime, Matt.
I would love it.
I want y'all to know that Matt Ryerson will be back. The door is always open if y'all have a mission or something that you want to get out there. I want y'all to know Matt Ryerson can always come to the round table. Tune in every Friday to Talkin' Tennessee with Yvonnca. Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to Talkin' Tennessee with Yvonnca. Watch out for our weekly episodes from the first family of real estate and check us out on the web, www.YvoncaSalesRealEstate.com. See our videos on Yvonca's YouTube channel or find us on Facebook under Yvonnca Landes and Twitter @Yvonnca Landes. And don't forget to tell a friend about us. Until next time, Yvonnca signing off.